You gotta love the power of authoritarian governments to shape reality. To have the fact checkers within the government that tells you what happened. And if you disagree with them, well, you're a danger to society. You're spreading dangerous misinformation. And nowhere can we see this happening better than in China. You see, at the end of the 1980s, China was actually going through a couple of reforms, which were giving people a little bit of liberty. And this was very problematic, especially because with the reforms, the economy in China starts to grow. The rich are getting poorer and the poor are getting a little bit more wealthy, which is not the natural way of things. But the reforms do seem to come to a stop when the pro-reform Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Hu Yaobang kicks the bucket. And this sparks a little bit of protesting in Tiananmen Square, where more and more people are gathering, to the point where it actually became a problem for the regime. So communists do what communists do best, and they suppress the protesters using various means such as tanks and small arms fire. Now, usually, nations that are powerful and strong, united together under the black fist and the hammer and sickle, they can sweep these things under the rug. Yes, a strong, powerful communist socialist government can move as many as 300,000 troops in the capital, as well with tanks, killing both demonstrators and bystanders in the process, and then sweep it under the rug because communism is strong. Socialism is powerful. Why? Because it controls the press. The press is owned by the state, and the state is not going to allow the press to criticize itself. Unfortunately for China, however, during this event, there were Western journalists present because there was a big meeting happening in Beijing, and the Western journalists actually saw the atrocities. Now, even though China tried its best at the time to take away the recordings and to make sure that no one has any video footage, you still have the journalists themselves returning to their nations of origin and talking about the atrocities. So the international human rights community at the time, they condemned the Chinese government for the massacre, and Western countries imposed arms embargoes to China. Now, the Chinese government, they deny that this event even happened. They do not admit to this day that such a thing even took place. And people saying otherwise are just spreading dangerous and harmful misinformation. However, there were places in China, for example in Hong Kong, where at the University of Hong Kong existed a statue commemorating this event. A statue which now the fact checkers have finally found that it was in violation of the Chinese government terms of service and therefore removed it into the dark of the night. So as you can see, they moved in, they put drapes all around the statue because you don't want people to see what's going on. When a person sees things, what the communists in Romania used to call it's a moral contagion. So you see something that's immoral and now you're contagious because you get the immorality into your head and now you can say it to others. So they did this quite fast, apparently, and they removed the statue. Now, what's interesting is that this is not surprising for a communist regime, as I mentioned, like communism, the black fist, strength, power, right? But you would expect that people in the West who are more inclined to democracy and freedom to at least condemn this act. And while I'm sure there are such people, you will not have an easy time finding them on the Twitter. As you can see, you have someone posting this information saying that during the dark of the night, communists came to steal shit. They removed the pillar of shame from the University of Hong Kong, which memorizes all those Chinese who were killed by their government during the Tiananmen Square massacre. And you have people carrying wata for the Chinese government. It's very interesting, because if you go to a socialist and you say, look, I don't like China, right? Like, China is a place where I wouldn't like to live in. The way the government controls its people, the way the government has the power to reshape reality is something that I'm not comfortable with. And they will say something like, oh, like China is not really communist. It's more like fascismus or whatever. And you kind of see their point of view, but when you look at how whenever China does something like this, they immediately defend it, it's very interesting. And the fact that they're not being called out by other peoples from within their community. Because you might say, well, maybe the people who are saying that China isn't socialist aren't the same people defending China. It's like, okay, they all have roses in the bio. They all have hammers and sickles. Like, fine. But like, why aren't they having like a infight between this? Where is the disagreement over this? Because it never happens. It's almost like they're in unity and agreeing with the fact that water needs to be carried. So you have this person saying somebody probably thought the sculpture of a pile of dead people didn't look so great on the streets and the walkways. Maybe it would be better suited in a dedicated memorial park elsewhere. So the first thing, it was in a university. The second thing, no one complained about it up until now. And the third and most importantly thing, you need to be absolutely delusional if you genuinely think that they're going to put it in another place. Yes, the country which denies that this event even happens and considers it to be misleading and dangerous information and harmful conspiracy theories is definitely going to have a museum dedicated to this statue. Absolutely, yes. I'm going to check my watch to see when it happens. Then you have people, how many killed in Vietnam that the government lied about. And yet we subsequently had Iraq and Afghanistan issues as recently reported with civilian deaths. Okay, so if America did it, it's fine. Okay, like you're absolutely fine because America did it. I mean, with this logic, you can even justify the atrocities done by the Germans during World War II. You can be like, well, America did the same to the natives, to the American Indians, so that is fine, right? My God, like these people, it's astonishing how they can just justify anything. And by the way, the United States never does something at this scale. There's no event in American history that is being considered. Imagine the Battle of the Wounded Knee. Go read it up if you don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't have the video time to describe what happened. But the Battle of the Wounded Knee, right? So now imagine if you had a university that had a statue commemorating that event, and then the government just denies the event even happened and removes the statue. You'd have people protesting, or at least you should, because I don't know, like right now it's in vogue to remove statues in the United States as well. It's almost like you're looking at China and you're like, oh, can we have some of that over here, please? Can we have some of that morality over here? Because it's so great, isn't it? It's so amazing. But to sum it up, there is a comment that I find myself in 100% agreement with. Many of the comments on this post demonstrate that the United States educational system has done a very poor job of training people in history and critical thinking. So I don't know if it did a poor job. I think it's working as intended. I don't think they want people to be able to critically think. I mean, the very notion of censorship isn't a bad thing in the United States right now. In fact, it's something desirable. So it doesn't really surprise me that Americans are looking towards another country and they're going, that country is removing history. That country is removing things that it doesn't like because the people in power don't like that being mentioned. And that's a good thing. And it just blows my mind. When is that a good thing? But it is what it is. Right. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.